Welcome to Lenses and Lyrics, where music and photography collide. This podcast dives into the crossover world of photographers who are or were musicians, those whose passion for sound influenced the way they see through the lens. Connect with all things Lenses and Lyrics at lenseslyrics.com. The countdown stayed on my screen longer than it probably should have.
It might have been waiting for me to click confirm.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it did that.
It was like warning me that it was being recorded, and then I had to clear that. And right when I did that, you said it was working.
That's funny. I didn't know it did that.
Good to know.
Oh, man, Descript is hilarious. So for those listening, we're recording this in Descript.
First time for me. I'm a Riverside person.
Yeah.
Personally,
so I typically use Riverside on the Imagine side, for the podcast for Imagine. But for this, I'm just like, I'm editing in Descript. Let's try Descript Rooms. And it's been working pretty good for it, so thankfully.
Okay.
But what I really like is I hit stop, and then 2 seconds later it shows up in the Descript app for me to start playing around with. So it's super
nice.
fast.
Yeah, integration. They're covering all the bases. They've been around a while, too, as a company.
Oh, yeah. So, Sam, I already know your music history, but for those listening, when we first met, we connected on the fact that we both have a background in music, which I already at the time had the idea of this podcast. And it's just like the more and more people in the industry that I've met over the years, it kept coming up that there's such a wide range of people who have a background in music.
Overlap of...
Yeah. So share with everybody listening who doesn't know your history with music.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up playing violin, my first instrument ever, when I was 7 years old. I decided to take that up because the girl named Carmen, who lived across the apartment from us, said she was going to take violin. She was a year younger than me, and I had a huge crush on her, so I had to compete with everything she did. So I was like, I'm going to take violin too. And I asked my mom, and she said, sure. And so from 7 years old on, I played through basically, I don't know, the first 1 or 2 years of college. That's when my violin kind of slowed down. But I'm really grateful for that because I just ended up realizing I had a natural passion for playing music. And I did not grow up in a very musical household at all. My mom never listens to music. Like the most amount of exposure I would ever get to listening to music on purpose was just like going to our church and singing, terrible hymns. And so that was violin. And I think around 6th grade, I was in orchestra, and there were a couple other guys around my age who were starting to get into other instruments like guitar and bass and all that kind of rock type stuff. And so I got an electric guitar. The brand is called Lady Luck, Lady Luck electric guitar. And then went off to summer camp. And one of the coolest camp counselors there convinced me that it's way easier to, woo the ladies with acoustic guitar. And so I came back from summer camp like, Mom, I want to trade in my electric guitar for an acoustic. And I got an Alvarez acoustic guitar. And, a couple years after figuring out, I'm totally self-taught on guitar. I mean, violin obviously gave me a wonderful foundation. And I, learned how to properly read music and was competitive in violin with like junior regionals and like all that stuff, and played in orchestra and trios and stuff like that every year through high school and then college just for fun. But guitar, totally self-taught. First thing I ever learned was the lead line to the Cranberry song, Zombies. And once I figured that out, just by listening, I was like, oh, this is crazy. You can just listen and mimic. Yeah. And then once I learned the power chord, I was like, now I can play every Green Day song. This is the cheat code. Like, this is how you make it. And so I grew up listening to all that kind of music in that era and joined a couple bands. We would start with cover songs and then started writing our own stuff, played in a couple bands in high school and then a few more serious ones in college and beyond. And then my mom used to be a drummer. So at some point she wasn't like a professional or anything, just for fun. She played drums, which was pretty cool. And at some point in our go into music stores or whatever, maybe I was around 16, I convinced her to buy like a $500 drum kit so that she could play drums. And of course, I was the only person to take that drum kit to my room and teach myself how to play drums. So I started playing drums, and that was where I wasn't a very good drummer. I'm much better now. But that foundation of having drums in songwriting is what motivated me to try and start recording this stuff. Because now I could just in my room, this is 1998 with Cool Edit Pro on a PC. I could start recording songs with one microphone and figure out music production. So that kicked all that off, and I ended up doing about 15 records or so for bands throughout college, and mostly like friends' bands, and I got sucked into a couple of metal bands that did pretty well. So I did a bunch of metal records, but a lot of acoustic, like indie and folk stuff, and then of course recording my own bands and stuff that I write just for fun. So I have an obscene amount of the gear acquisition syndrome is strong with me, and it's particularly strong with music stuff. Well, mostly because I like to collect it. Sorry,
no. So the gear acquisition syndrome, which is a lot of photographers are familiar with, it's not just for photography.
Oh no, not at all. Almost anything you can think of. I was talking to a photographer the other day. He has like 100 pens. Like all these ballpoints and like crazy pen. There's like a whole industry of pen makers, and but music it's almost, in a lot of ways, it's exactly the same as photography in terms of how you think about your gear. And in some ways it's very different, but I would say it's more similar than not. There's so many things that I guess it's a little trickier in the music world when you're recording, because it's not something you can see. So it really requires you to train your ear in a way that it's hard to explain. And I don't even know what direction we want to go in. But if any one thing in your signal flow, your like chain of effects, microphone, preamp, sound card, all the way through the speakers or headphones you're listening through, if any one of those things is like a poor quality, doesn't matter how much money you spend on anything else in the chain, it is going to be brought down, and it may potentially bring down the entire quality of
it could literally be something as simple as the XLR cable that you're using, which might cost $40-$50 for a good one, but if you bought the $10 one that doesn't have the right insulation, you're going to get signals that are going through that cable that then buzz throughout the entire recording.
And I lived through the era of recording when Edge cell phone connectivity was everywhere, and you would get the like beep 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 beep, the cell phone interface with especially if you coiled up your cables, it was like basically an antenna now. So that, I would say, is a little trickier in music because there's so many links in the chain, where photography is sort of just lens and sensor, monitor your screen. There's like 3. With recording, it can be infinite, especially if you start using analog effects like compressors, EQs, reverbs, all that stuff. It's wild.
Every little thing makes a difference. It could even be something as simple as what battery you're using. Like if for guitarists that use foot pedals that are battery powered, you use a crappy battery and that battery goes out on you, you're getting no sound go through.
Right. Yeah. So in a big way, I think music shape, it's hard to explain exactly, but it gave me a really fast ability to adjust and understand, almost in an intuitive sense, of what I needed to do in my photography to be better or feel like I was doing better. Like the ramp up for me being like a good photographer was very, very fast. And I attribute that to my understanding in music, specifically music production, and not only about the technical aspects, in fact, just as much, I would say, about the instinctual creative aspects, the decision-making that you have to go through when recording a song. I hear all the time in the photography world, you have to kill your darlings. I don't know if that's still the phrase people resonate with, but, it's about like curating down your work to where it's the best that it can be, because it is, not just because you have an emotional connection to it. So many photographers show things in their work that they themselves personally love because they have some memory or some sentimental connection to it, where there's space for that. But if that is the overriding reason you're doing something, you're just never going to get anything done. Like, you have to have output for your clients, right? And so with music, it kind of became the same thing for me, where it's just like, is that take absolutely perfect? No. Is it good enough? And have we given it our best? Yes. Well, then let's stick with it. And then what do you know? 2 years later, people are like, I love that take. That felt really raw and like real. And it's like, yeah. At the time, it's hard to have that perspective because you want like perfection and you want clean takes of everything with no problems. And then you realize later on that like actually what really makes it work a lot of times is not having that. But it's all a balance you have to strike. And that's where it really, any type of creative output you do can inform other creative outputs and kind of teach you to strike that balance no matter what you do. So it's kind of amazing.
I want to fast forward a bit, and then we're going to rewind again. But in the photography world, one of the things that you're known for with your work is your work with prisms and other objects. What came first? Was it prisms with photography? This is the chicken or egg question, or is it the band named Prism? Yeah. Which came first?
So literally the band was, I remember the day, this was sophomore year of college. We all were on summer break and wanted to start a new band where there were like 4 of us. And we wanted to start a band where we each played not our primary instrument. So I would at the time describe myself primarily a guitarist. I wanted to play bass, and a guy who was primarily a bassist wanted to play guitar. A guy who had never really played any instrument wanted to play guitar. And then we had a guy who's primarily a guitarist wanted to play a drummer. So we were really just like, we're just going to try this because it's weird. And I remember the day we narrowed down our list of band names to 2 contenders, Prisms or Rhinoceros. And I don't even remember how we got to either of them, to be honest, but we went with Prisms, and that by far and away, it was years before I had been doing photography in a serious way. I had always done photography kind of just as a hobby, picked up in high school, and never really did anything with it seriously until I graduated and randomly got a job with it. So Prisms, the band, came first, and that is why I bought the Prism that I still shoot with today. I mean, I've lost the original. I bought like 100 once I realized, there's actually something to this. So I just wouldn't have to think about or worry if I dropped or lost it, because that happens a lot. I'm probably down to like 50 Prisms now. But we were trying to figure out album art concepts for our first record that we recorded in college. And we were mixing in that stage, and I bought a Prism. It just kind of sat on my desk. We ended up not using it at all for the album art. But, I was thinking something in the vein of, I don't know, not Pink Floyd necessarily, but it was just something, it was a prism, right? Like, certainly we can come up with something to do with it. And I ended up bringing it with me to a wedding, and that's how that kicked off the whole prisming thing. That's the whole story. I realized, oh my gosh, I can reflect things, especially during getting ready photos, like distracting elements, trash, food bags, makeup stuff. I could just reflect it out of the shot, and it just opened up the entire thing. So,
it would have been much harder if you went with Rhinoceros, to bring a Rhinoceros to every wedding.
We ended up naming a song Rhinoceros, and it is one of our better ones. But I think it was just sort of like
like, what are you going to name it? Just to throw a random thing out there. Yeah.
You don't know. Yeah. What band is named Rhinoceros? I still think it's a good name, actually.
I think.
But no one would know how to spell it.
I think when you played shows and somebody had to design a flyer, they would have hated you for having to type out the word rhinoceros, or cut out letters from magazines and newspapers to throw on a flyer with the word rhinoceros.
Yeah. But Prisms had its own issues because, in a live venue, when we'd play shows and stuff, we'd be like, yeah, we're Prisms. And people would always think we were prisons. Like a prison cell. Like, oh, you guys are prisons? It's like, no, prisms. It's really hard to get that clarity when you're, in a PA.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. You started mentioning your shift into photography. Can you dive into that? So your first job in photography, like as a professional, was not weddings, correct? It was...
Correct.
Can you talk about that shift, how that came to be and what it was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was through Craigslist, who I would later photograph, the actual Craig.
There is?
At a press event. There's a real Craig. Yeah, he sold it a long time ago. Apparently, he just randomly will take support calls for them now. I don't know. So I met him actually 2008, right when I started at this place called the National Press Club. They were looking to expand their offerings. So the Press Club, very renowned historic location for events in DC. Literally anybody can rent a room with a microphone, rent a, teleprompter, TV, video cameras, the whole works. And many historic events have happened there over the years, but they have a whole broadcast studio and it's a whole thing. But they wanted to just add cheap and easy photography for clients if they wanted their own photos. A lot of these events would be open to the public. And so, hordes of photographers would show up, but it was, they would never get like the photos, right? They would always just be pushed to the newswire kind of agencies and that'd be that. So anyway, they wanted to hire somebody real cheap. I had another job offer in a more related field, information and computer science, which is what I actually studied. But I decided to go for this route because I would have been able to kind of build the photography service from scratch. And I really did start from scratch. All I started with was actually my own Nikon D50 and the kit lens that it came with. And I worked for them full time, but they put some money behind, some lenses and camera bodies and stuff. And yeah, it was just general events. And so, it was people speaking in front of a podium, sometimes, especially pre-social media, the way that it is now, at least, really high level people would come in person to, try and generate more buzz, because you'd be having a press conference with a bunch of journalists and stuff. You have a celebrity or a high level politician come, more journalists would turn out. And so you would get more coverage. So I just stumbled into this situation where I had access to really amazingly high level people. And the better I got and the more efficient and quick and professional I got in the scenario, because I was the only photographer, officially the press club photographer there, the more they let me kind of just do whatever I wanted, because the work was really good. And they knew, I was never gonna, there was always a balance, again, that I tried to strike between pushing myself into trying something different, even though these were boring press events, and delivering what I know the client needs without making it about me. So, yeah.
Was most of the people that were there that you'd be photographing are politicians, maybe some movie stars, actors, etc. Mm-hmm. Were there musicians ever that would come and do an event there that you'd photograph?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Will.i.am was there. Nobody turned up for his event. It was really awkward. Yeah. Sometimes, the press club itself is a famous place, but a lot of times just saying like, oh, I'm having an event at the press club, that doesn't guarantee turnout. The press club doesn't do any promotion. They might put your event on their like agenda on their website, but it's up to that organization to promote and get the turnout. And so a lot of my job as a photographer would be photographing things strategically so that it looked more exciting and more crowded than it really was. That was a lot of the time, the case. So anyway, but Will.i.am, there's so many, honestly, it's going to be hard. Billy Joel, Dolly Parton, gosh, who else? There's another rapper, Ludacris. Oh, freaking Jonas, Nick Jonas.
Jersey boy.
Yeah. So there's probably at least 10 others. Yeah. I'm terrible at names. Cool. I'm never going to remember.
That's fun though.
But yes, many. Because, musicians like anyone would attach themselves. Billy Joel, they would attach themselves to all kinds of causes. And that's, again, just kind of lucked out with that access.
Yeah. So you've performed in front of people with past orchestra, school concerts, the bands. How has performing music in front of other people influenced how you connect with people when you photograph their weddings or, for couples that you photograph, outside of weddings?
It's a really good question. Huh. Well, I mean, one of the traditions of, I assume it's still the case, most school systems use something called the Suzuki method. which is just for violin instruction. It's a collection of 10 books. You start from Lightly Row and Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Actually, you start learning how to play violin with an egg carton.
Really?
To just like hold it. Huh. Yeah. You just hold it in your shoulder to try and work the muscle of like holding something with the right neck shape and everything. Yep. And then a pencil to try and get the bow, because there's a really specific way you hold the bow with a violin. And then you move to an actual violin after like 4 weeks. God bless those violin instructors. Could you imagine, a bunch of like 6-7-year-olds with egg cartons, like trying to teach them something musical? Like
they're not actually doing anything. They're not actually like playing and
Exactly. I can't even remember maybe we had music on or something. But one of the traditions of that, I think it's part of the Suzuki system, is you would have a solo as a individual student. Each one would have to play a solo. Maybe that wasn't like your first few years, but very young and very early on, you had to start doing one solo. Each kid would have a song, and then you'd kind of come out for a group thing. And I mean, that was terrifying, right? I was nervous, shaking, but I did learn something, I think, early about myself and how my body would physically deal with that. And, so many people get like the shakes or start sweating and all this. And I would yawn. It was really weird. And I picked up on that when I was like 10 years old, that if I'm yawning in a way that I can kind of float out from myself and observe, like you're yawning a lot, you're not tired, then I know that I'm nervous. And I don't know, something about that knowledge prepared me in a way that it's hard to articulate. I guess as time went on, doing these like yearly performances, solo performances, did get easier and easier. But I don't know. I obviously that had to help in some way, but I was still nervous for a long time to ever get up and talk to people. I remember one of the requirements in college was to take either communications like PR class, where you had to give speeches in front of your class, or do something else. There was an alternative, and I always did the alternative because I didn't want to get up and talk. And so that was an acquired skill for me that I never really. I guess where I was going with the yawning thing was eventually I started to realize I wasn't yawning as much toward like my later years as a violinist. And I realized the energy that I was feeling was more just excitement than anything else. And that's sort of the same transition that happened with weddings, where, around year 3 is where I kind of transitioned from this sort of passive, lethargic energy where I was nervous, but that's how my body was expressing it for whatever reason. I feel like that's a pretty good defensive thing, because if your competitors see you yawning, they're like, oh, he doesn't give a shit. But I did. Trust me, I was nervous. But around year 3, I started to feel less of that and more just these butterflies that were just excited energy. Just I can't wait to go do this because I know I'm good at it. And it took years to develop. But the actual public speaking and kind of connecting with people verbally, just tons and tons and tons of practice, and a lot of the workshop stuff I did, small group workshops, really helped. And I have a habit of kind of overextending and over pushing myself in the beginning of something to not only like prove to myself on some level that I can do it, but because if you kind of start there, then it only gets easier. And so my first workshop ever was in Santiago, Chile. 25 people each day, so 50 students total, through a translator, because I did not speak Spanish. My first workshop ever. And I was like, if I can make it through this and people are happy, then I could teach a workshop in English, no problem. So yeah, that
yourself out away from the comfort zone is do it in a language that you can't even speak natively.
It's crazy. I've had to do many presentations in like South America, and you're up on a stage sometimes, and they got to translate every sentence. And eventually, again, it kind of comes back to music. You hit this rhythm of speaking, and especially with a translator, you hit this cadence of back and forth where you fall into a groove. And I don't know exactly how that tracks and lays on top of the foundation of having a musical background, but I guarantee that it does. And also just stage awareness, what to do with the microphone and how to not do the thing that I see every weekend where it's like, hello, oh, and then they tinker with the mic and it's like, is this thing on? Hello? Hello? It's like the natural flow of how things need to go in a performance is something that has somewhat come naturally to me, but it's always hard to also get a read on that because I never watch myself like recorded in a presentation like that. I will never bring myself to do. People ask me to come back. I consider that a good thing. If they don't, then
so you just brought up the microphone placement. Before we hit record, we were talking about something really interesting, and that is that for the past year or so, you've been doing like basically having a video as like another upsell package for your weddings, and we don't have to get into the nitty gritty in this episode, but I do want to talk about one thing that was brought up again before we hit record, which was the audio. Because I agree that when it comes to video, yes, you can have an amazing cinematographer, and all that stuff. But if the audio is crap, then all goes out the window potentially, right? So,
yes.
So could you talk about, you're actually miking up the couples, or you're miking up the father of the bride who's doing a speech, or whatever it might be that's getting filmed. Can you talk about that process and whatnot, how that came to be?
Yeah. So let me actually pull it back to one of my fundamental issues I have with videography in general, or maybe even cinematography, right? Or I don't know, but it's the fact that I would say 99% of the time, it's got to be somewhere in that realm, the person putting together, especially the wedding video, if it's a wedding video, I don't know about corporate stuff, but almost certainly there too, 99% of the time, the music that is chosen to go along with that wedding highlight reel or what have you is just a song that is hopefully legally licensed, but not at all made by the person making the video, right? They're just choosing a song and cutting a video to that. But music does like 80% of the emotional labor when it comes to watching a video or watching a movie. Like, have you seen many films without musical soundtrack? There aren't many. I'll say one of my favorite Prisms shows, we projected No Country for Old Men on top of us the entire time because there's no music in that. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of just fun thing. I don't think there's music in it.
I don't think
or there's very little.
There is.
And I just thought that was a fun thing. But, this is like not a show we made money from, so nobody come after us. But we projected that whole movie on us during our like CD release show or something, and we thought we were being really cool. But I've always had an issue with that because it's just doing so much of the emotional labor. And I would want to write the music personally, which I would never have time to do. Yeah, I could like AI generate it now, but I don't want to do that either. To really feel like this was something I have 100% made all on my own and put out into the world for my couples or for me, or to just like, push something forward. And so I've always had an aversion toward leaning much into video because of that simple fact. It's also why I've never done wedding slideshows, right? That's a huge marketing tool for a lot of photographers to just pick a song, slideshow set to music, line up the beats, you're done, right? And it's a powerful, powerful way to tell a story. But I don't want that energy to come from something I literally just chose from a catalog. That has always felt really just disconnected from my motivation for why I do this to begin with. And so when video started to become a little bit more just in demand from people asking, just like, do you have videographers you work with? Do you provide it yourself? I started to think about what I would want to provide for my clients if I could do it or provide it under, the Sam Hurd photography umbrella. And I thought more and more about the audio and how I really only think I care about the speeches, right? The things their officiant, they themselves, the couple, their friends and family are saying to each other during the majority of the day. So once the little, now very commonplace, like DJI style microphones became, popular on the market, very affordable, super easy to kind of hide anywhere, really easy to tie into your equipment, great battery life, 32-bit float. So it's really hard to like clip and distort in a way that's terrible. Once those came on the market, I realized like audio is not that hard anymore. It used to be terribly hard. You'd have to mic people up with a big pack on their back and a whole lav. And I've seen some videographers use two. They would like not know how to like hook into the DJ's system, or maybe they were just worried about redundancy, but they'll like hook two packs up. I also had years of observation of seeing how videographers would approach things, especially from the audio side, and eventually realized I can do it myself with just a couple DJI mics. One that I would just like snap on magnetically to the DJ's own speaker, and then another one near the actual. I have these little slide-on microphone. It's literally like an elastic thing that goes around the microphone handle and then slides into that, the DJI mic itself. So people just hold the mic like normal, but I'm getting clean audio directly from their voice.
Well, and most people won't even notice the little DJI mic that's rubber banded to the regular mic.
Yep. Yeah. And it's not going to like, hopefully, potentially fall out or anything super awkward, because you don't want those little mics falling out, right? So not having to mic people up on their body. I mean, I come with a lav mic and a wire to do that if I absolutely had to, but it hasn't happened yet. If people are saying something important, there's a microphone for it, usually. And so I based everything that I deliver in my videography, the like long form stuff, like the features, all around the important like audio moments of the day, the ceremony, speeches, and then of course like little first dance vignettes. But I don't even edit together a storyline. I just let the audio be what it is from their day. And then I take a bunch, or have somebody shooting, take a bunch of like 30-second clips that I deliver alongside, like chronological order in my photo gallery. All those clips get delivered alongside it. Just like you're in your Photos app. If you've ever scrolled through that, you see your videos play alongside your still photos. And that's a really nice balance for me. It's a lot less work on the editing side, but I feel like it's, again, a great balance between what I think is important. I think long-term people are going to be much more interested in the emotion of seeing like the raw, straight up, here's the scene and here's great clean audio of what is being said here, compared to whatever is trendy in the moment, super fast-paced highlight reel that's cut to a song that is, again, probably from some random catalog. Yeah, so that's been my thing. And again, I can attribute my history to music for kind of gravitating toward that approach in a way that I don't know. I'm sure other people have done that in their galleries, but for me, it's new and unique and what I'm leaning into. So we'll see.
I like the approach actually. I like it a lot, especially as like, I know you've been doing the BTS thing as well for many, many years, where it's just like on you and out of the way. When I photograph my surprise proposals, I've had a GoPro on top of my camera. I'm now in the process of migrating that to a Osmo Pocket 3 on top of my camera, which is going to be a little more awkward, but also much better quality, in my opinion.
Yes. It is way better quality. That's the one trade-off I'm striking that balance in. Again, it's like all about balance. I wear a 360 camera that is just rubber banded to my sling. I know you know this, but just so anybody, so I can just hit record and it just goes. Now I got the newest one, the Insta360 1X5, and that thing just goes for like 2 hours. So I don't have to think about stop, record, stop, record. I can just let it go. And I don't have to think about aiming it, as long as my bag is on me. And that is very freeing creatively. So I don't have to, even taking little 30-second clips throughout the day is a new constraint that is a little uncomfortable. And I like that. It's good to do things in your process that trip you up a little bit, because it keeps you engaged, I think, and mindful. But it is a lot of work, even just to take like simple 30-second clips and then balance should this moment, is it well served as a clip, a video, or should I take it as a still photo? Do I have enough time to do both or not? Right? Like, I don't know. So it's really interesting, but I think a really nice way to integrate. And I think people will look at the like actual 30-second clips more often than they otherwise would. Like, how often are people really sitting down and watching their highlight reel after the first couple months that they have it, right? It's probably every couple years at best. And so these little clips just right there embedded alongside their still photos, I think they're just going to have fun with, sure. I hope.
I'm going to throw at you real quick as we wrap this up 3 hot seat questions. You've got, give me like 10 seconds for each answer if you can. Real quick. At weddings, you often have earbuds in, so you don't hear the lovely wedding music that is at every single wedding.
Yeah.
So when the wedding guests are listening to the typical wedding songs, what are you jamming out to in your ears?
Yeah, so shout out to Colorwares. It's just the number one Google search. I don't have any partnership with them. You don't like buy and then send them off. You literally buy from them a brand new pair of whatever headphones they have in their catalog. But I have AirPod Pros painted matte black, so they look totally not like AirPods. Obviously, they look like headphones, but it's not like I'm sitting there with white AirPods. And yeah, during receptions, when it's just open dancing and all the classic top 40 like stuff that I've heard a billion times over and over and over, that really started to wear on me emotionally. Like I can only hear Sweet Caroline so many times on a weekend. You know, there were years I was shooting 50 plus weddings a year. Like that just starts to grind you down a little. And now I'm finding weddings are they're playing more music I grew up listening to, like Blink-182 and Green Day and all this. And I'm like, well, that was fun for a little while. And now I'm starting to hate those songs too. So yes, I pop in my AirPod Pros, noise cancellation. First of all, you should do that anyway, even if you don't do what I do and actually listen to songs. Protect those ears, seriously. Yep. The prime spot for me, my back is like right in front of the DJ speaker because I want all the guests in the background, not the DJ stuff. Maybe if there's a band, that's a different story. But yeah, I listen to Veil of Maya. I like the contrast of just ridiculously hard metal in my ears while people are like visibly dancing to Shout. Because it just makes it fun for me. One, I feel like I'm getting away with something maybe I shouldn't be. And two, occasionally the beats of what I'm listening to, no matter how chaotic and crazy, occasionally match up with what they're dancing to. Yeah. So it feels kind of like they're like dancing to, punk or metal songs. And that just makes me smile and I love it. And it really does tune me in visually because navigating the space around me, making sure nobody's like about to throw their arms up and like hit me in the face or something. I have to be very, very visually dialed in because I'm not hearing the auditory cues. There's like this weird layer of disconnection that I find really just refreshing. Like I can shoot hours and hours with that setup. And I'm so glad there's a Kickstarter campaign in 2015 called Ear-In. They were the very first that I found in-ear Bluetooth connected headphones that had like the memory foam. They didn't have noise cancellation, but it was enough that I could listen to something while music was being played. Nice. So that's my story there.
If you could photograph any musician or band, past or present, who would it be?
Oh, gosh.
It's a hard one. You think it would be easy, but it's hard.
That is. Dang. Yep. Ooh. Probably, it's funny. I don't even listen to his music, but I respect his ethos very much about music. Jack White.
Interesting.
So the guitarist from West
I can see that.
He's just a very first of all, visually, just an interesting guy, right? Like the hair and everything.
He's all about the analog.
But which I'm not necessarily, but I respect that he's thought through the reasons why, and he's really articulate. And anytime I've ever read an interview from him about his choice in analog equipment, I'm like, that makes perfect sense. I understand now. I still don't. It's not for me. All the analog stuff, but he's right in so many ways. And but I think he would be just open to just whatever.
Seems like it.
Photographically in a session. So
last question.
That's
if your photography style was a genre of music, what would it be?
Dang.
It's funny. So you and I came up in the same era of music with the same, underground scene and all that stuff, right? And not far from each other. I remember very clearly when everything started getting the emo genre thrown on top
label.
of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not.
That's where it's tricky. Yeah. There's so many like subgenres, and now it's like I always think of stuff as being under like just the indie rock umbrella. And it's like, what is that? Like that, there's such a range there. So that is a really great one. Alternative indie rock is what I would hope for. But that covers, and hopefully this is represented in things like my portfolio and in my kinds of weddings that I get. I've been really grateful to have always said yes to anybody who is interested in working with me. I've never said, I don't, after a client call, I don't think this is a good fit. Let me refer you to another photographer, right? If people want to hire me, even if I don't understand why, based on like what they've told me about their wedding day or the location or whatever, I trust that they want that, because I have only been true to myself and showing what I want to shoot, right? In my portfolio, in a blog post, on my Instagram, like I really, really try and only show what I am most proud of and what resonates with me. And so I have to trust that that is going to serve me well by bringing people in that maybe they can't even articulate why they want to hire me. And maybe everything about their venue, they even know isn't like what I normally would shoot, but they trust me to bring what I do out of that environment or out of them and their personalities. And so I'm along for the ride. And so I've been very, very grateful to have just a huge array of just cultures, religions, locations, and personalities of people that, I love. Like, I love having that overarching indie rock label, and I can just photograph every subgenre within that, right? As long as something about us is aligned. And I am not at all trying to make the case that all my clients like my kind of music, because they do not. Yeah. But it's just, a metaphor, I suppose.
I can visually see how your style could fit into both alternative and indie rock in many ways. And I think that's a good label to throw on there.
That's cool. It's a really good question.
Sam, this has been a lot of fun. You were a big part of my push to actually make this show happen. And even though I'm just getting started, nice. I know there's so many more people I can talk to, which I'm really excited about.
It's 90% of photographers I feel like come from a music background or like a graphic design background. It's like there's some funnel system happening. It's so interesting. It is so interesting. Yeah. I'm going to link to all the places everybody can find you in the show notes, but if you want to just do a quick shout out of where people can find you, please. Oh yeah, just samhurdphotography.com, Hurd. Although how cool would it be if it was HEARD? Then it would be really meta with the music and photography tie-in, right? Sam Hurd Photography, Hurd. And then I am the Sam, is my Instagram. And yeah, those are my two primary places, but and then Prisms. Yep. Yeah, that's, our drummer had a kid and we haven't really played since. So it's been a few years, but our most recent release is definitely the one we're most proud of. The album's called Noise, and it's on everything. But if you look up Prisms, Noise, the cover art's kind of cool. Maybe a good closing note. My friend Nathan and I, he's the singer and primary singer and guitarist. I do some singing. We took a bunch of convex lenses and stacked them in front of a macro lens. You get diminishing returns where it doesn't actually do anything past a certain point, but put that in front of a giant 65-inch TV, and we realized with some extra cropping on top of that, we could get the pixels of the array of pixels from the TV screen close enough that we have the red, green, and blue pixels from my TV as the album art. And it's just kind of cool. Fun. We just sat there for like an hour photographing stuff until we figured out this is kind of neat. Yeah. And it's very colorful the way Prisms tend to be and everything else. So
amazing. Yeah. I will definitely be having both the Apple Music and the Spotify links to Prisms in the show notes as well. So
awesome.
Thanks for chatting and sharing all this fun stuff about music.
I'm excited for this. I hope this takes off for you and you get just loads of interesting people, and you're going to get a lot of different perspectives and stories. Yep. I mean, yeah.
Yep. Appreciate it.